Hello, all my freeloaders, and welcome back for some more Drag Race gossip, secrets, and drama. So, I'm back for the final Have Your Say for season 17, and today we're going to be going through the finale.
Oh, just get on with it, please.
So, today I'll be recapping the episode, going through the results of the Have Your Say poll where you at home get to vote on whether you agree with the outcome of the episode.
We already know that.
And I'll be talking about a little bit of light drama to do with some apparent suspicious activity to do with the finale voting. And also, Suzie Toot may have accidentally breached her contract. All that and more coming up in today's video, so let's get started. Also, I would just like to start this out with an apology. There was a comment recently on my channel from this person who said that they felt diminished because apparently my videos come out too late because I am leaving them for my patrons. So I do feel like I need to address this really, really sort of important comment that someone left. And as we all know, videos do grow on trees and it takes absolutely no time to make them. They just make themselves. There's no scripting, editing, recording, thumbnail creation, subtitles, trying to make 2 videos a week in a timely manner, collating data from my Have Your Say poll. None of that is actually important. Clearly, I am just keeping it all from you. So I am sorry that you feel diminished and that other people are doing it a lot quicker than I am and you're having to wait such a long time for the Drag Race tea. So I would just like to take this opportunity to give my heartfelt apology to all of you freeloaders. But for all of you who do love my diminishedly late videos, please make sure you hit subscribe because I'd love to get to 150,000 subscribers by the end of the year. Okay, so we're here at the finale of Drag Race Season 17. So at first we had all the eliminated queens come out. I was going to get you all to vote on the looks, but I thought that would just take too long. I feel like all of them did really well. I enjoyed all of the looks. We also got a little performance by RuPaul, and I do love it when RuPaul feels her judge and she does a nice little performance, so I did enjoy that as well. Okay, so let's move on to the final 4 performances because each one of them did a song that they actually did the vocals on themselves, which I think is one of the first times we've seen this happen. I do wonder whether it's because they didn't really do a writing lyrics challenge on the actual season, so this was kind of their equivalent. So what I'm going to do is I'll quickly go through all 4 of the contestants because I asked you to rank them in the Have Your Say poll. So I'll go through all of them first and then we'll get into the ranking. So first up was Jules Sparkles. I really enjoyed Jules's. I thought she had a really good mix of kind of comedy. She was telling the story of her journey through Drag Race. The whole ding thing I thought was really funny. But she also just came across as being really charismatic. I really loved the bit where she got back up on the podium and fell down. And at first I thought that was real. And then she got back up and I realized it was part of obviously a bit. But I thought she really sold that. And I think actually hers was maybe my favorite because it was just so funny, but also had a real good message behind it as well. So I really enjoyed Jules in general. Also, I just realized that I don't think I had my side light on. So if I suddenly look, beautifully lit, that's why. Okay, so moving on to the second performance, we had Lexi Love. I did actually personally really enjoy Lexi. I know that maybe it's other people's opinions. They thought that doing the skating thing was boring because she's done it already. I actually enjoyed the skating because I do think it's a real talent that not everyone can do. Yes, we've seen it before because she did it for her talent show at the beginning of the season. But if you've got a talent, you may as well flaunt it because the other queens do that. If a queen is a really good singer or dancer, no one's going to complain that they keep doing the same thing. So I actually really enjoyed Lexi's. I don't think the song itself was maybe quite as catchy as Jules is. I don't know how much input the queens actually have in that, so I'm not sure we can necessarily give responsibility to Lexi for that because it may have been production that did that. But in terms of the actual staging and the style, it wasn't maybe quite as I thought as interesting as Jules is, but I did really enjoy the skating bit because it is something that I could not do that. I would definitely break both of my hips if I tried to do that. Next up, we had Anya Nerve. I will say of all of them, I think Anya's vocals were the best. We know she's a really good singer because they did that challenge near the beginning of the season where they did the Untucked songs, and she did the Laganja one, and that was maybe my favorite moment of the whole season because she really sold that song and her voice is so good. I will say though, in terms of the staging, the performance and everything, I don't think it was quite as interesting as Lexi and Jules's. It was just Anya dancing, which is fine, but I think when you're comparing it to someone who's skating or someone who does a lot of sort of funny falling off the stage and things, I do feel like Anya's maybe didn't quite have that oomph factor that I wanted, maybe. So I would say this was probably one of the ones on the lower side for me, but I do think she looked amazing and had the attitude and had the vocals down, but maybe not my actual favorite performance. Then finally, we had Sam Starr. I really enjoyed Sam's because it definitely had the country vibe. That's what she's known for. I thought she executed it really well. The bit I loved the most was the whole red carpet, which was part of her outfit, became the carpet. I don't think we've ever seen that done before on Drag Race that I can think of. So I was really impressed by that and thought that was a really innovative thing to do. I thought the song was fun. I don't think it was quite as catchy as some of the others, but I still really enjoyed it. And I thought she gave her all in the performance section. So it was a very good performance for me. So in terms of the Have Your Say poll for this, I asked you to rank them. So if I show you all of them on screen, as you can see, each of the queens has the amount of votes, whether people voted them in first, second, third, or fourth place. If we look at Jules, she got the most amount for number one, which is in blue. So people mostly voted her as number one. And I would definitely agree with that. I would also have put Jules number one because I think I enjoyed hers the most. Then we had Lexi Love. As you can see, she got most votes around the 2 and 3 mark, so somewhere in the middle. And again, I would agree with that because I don't think she was the best, but she wasn't the worst either. Anya's was interesting because she actually got quite an even split if you look among the 4 different numbers. She actually got more of the green, which is number 4, but not the most of all of the number 4s. So yeah, I agree. Personally, I think I would have put her either 3 or 4 because I don't think her performance itself was maybe as memorable. And then finally, if we move on to Sam Starr, she did definitely get the most in the number 4 category, so the green, which means that she was voted last by most people. I'm not sure I technically agree with that. I think I may have put Anya last, maybe, because I just don't think her performance itself was quite as memorable as Sam's. I do think Sam wasn't the best, but I do think maybe she should have been 3. My ranking probably would have been Jules, Lexi, Sam, Anya. And as I said earlier, we don't necessarily know how much say and input the queens have in these songs, so it is difficult to really judge because if production made these songs, it's not really the queen's fault, but I think the only thing they can control, I suppose, is the performance. I'm pretty sure I remember that someone from season 14, and I can't remember who it was, they once said in an interview that for the season 14 final performances, they got given the song by production and they were allowed to say, no, I want a new song, but they were only allowed to say it one time. And then the second song they were given was it. So they couldn't say no to the second song. So it was kind of like a gamble, like, do I say no to the first song and get a second song? And I wonder if that was the case here, if the queens get given the song and they get one chance to change things. But anyway, I don't know if this is true. This is just something I remember hearing, but I can't remember who said it. But it would be interesting to know how much input the queens actually have, because I think that would maybe sway more of people's opinion about their performances. Okay, so then we move on to the voting for the Miss Congeniality. And we find out that Crystal Envy is chosen by the queens as the Miss Congeniality. And I definitely agree. To be honest, I had kind of almost forgotten a little bit about Crystal Envy because she was eliminated quite early. But when I think back to it, she was actually really sweet and nice. And quite a few of the queens at Roscoe's have mentioned how nice she was and that she left gifts for people. And she also let people borrow stuff all the time. So because the queens themselves are voting on this, I can see why she won it rather than it being a fan vote like they did in the past, because it really shows you who the queens themselves, almost like behind closed doors, think is the Miss Congeniality. And so I asked you in the Have Your Say poll, who would you have chosen for Miss Congeniality? And you voted 31.2% for Crystal Envy, 25.3% for Lydia B. Collins, and then Lana was third with 13.4%. We also had an amazing little dedication to the icon and legend that is Liza Minnelli. And I really appreciated this because Liza is obviously someone who's extremely famous, especially within the LGBT plus community. She's so fun, so talented, and I really enjoyed seeing her on this screen, especially because they've mentioned her so many times on the show. They even had a lip sync song by her last episode. So I really enjoyed seeing Liza and the fact that she is getting the recognition, but also the fact that she agreed to be on Drag Race in the first place is really cool for the show as well. Okay, so then it comes time for the final two to be announced, and we find out that the final two are Anya Nerve and Jules Sparkles. I asked you in the Have Your Say poll, did you expect the top two to be Anya and Jules? And you said 62.7% for yes and 37.3% for no. And then I said, for those of you who voted no, who did you expect to be in the final two instead? And as you can see, this is the amount of votes for all four queens. So obviously Anya and Lexi got the highest amount of votes. So clearly those were the two people who people thought was going to be in the final two. And so we have the final lip sync of the season between Anya and Jules to the song Abracadabra by Lady Gaga. I did enjoy this lip sync. I think it was a fun song. It's obviously a very famous song, and Lady Gaga is obviously hugely famous, especially within the LGBT plus community. I will say I do think Jules won the lip sync if we're just purely looking at the lip sync. Although Anya did really well, I don't think it was just quite as much as Jules was doing. The only thing I would say is I don't know why Jules wore black at the beginning, because we know by now that the stage just swallows up black colors because anything dark just doesn't show up because the stage is so dark. So I think her lip sync only really took effect when she took the black off, whereas Anya stood out from the beginning because the red just really popped. But I don't think that Anya maybe quite had as many gags and reveals, which can be a good thing. And I think it was deliberate by Anya to not do gags. And I think she did an interview with Entertainment Weekly where she said that she deliberately didn't do any gags because she is the gag. And I can see that, but I do think that Jules won the lip sync if we're just purely looking at the lip sync itself. And I asked you in the Have Your Say poll, who do you think won the top two lip sync? And you voted 71.6% for Jules Sparkles and 28.4% for Anya. And so we then find out that the winner of the season is Anya Nerve. So congratulations to Anya for winning season 17. You did so well this season. And I was definitely team Anya. I said this multiple times in my videos. I think she did a great season. She was really fun. And I did think going into it, it was guaranteed pretty much that she was going to win. But I also do think she deserved it because she's extremely talented. I asked you, did you agree with the overall winner of the season being Anya? And you voted 75.6% for yes and 24.5% for no. 24.5.
Because reading is what?
Fundamental.
So it looks like although you agreed that Jules won the lip sync, you also agreed that Anya deserved to win the season. So it does kind of raise the question of, does the lip sync matter? I don't think that it does. I think it's just a formality and just for entertainment purposes. I think Anya was going to win regardless, unless she literally completely flopped the finale, which was unlikely. I couldn't really see anyone else winning. And then lastly, I asked you to rate the season out of 5 stars, 1 being the lowest, 5 being the highest. And you gave an average rating of 3.66 stars. And if we look at the distribution of the vote, most people, almost half, voted 4 stars. And then after that was 3 stars, which explains why the average was 3.6. I'm not sure if I would give it 3.6. I feel like that's a little bit on the lower end. I agree this wasn't maybe the most dynamic or exciting season we've seen. I think last season was more exciting than this. But I think I would have given it 4 stars because it was still enjoyable. I did really enjoy the cast. I think Anya's a great winner. So overall, I personally would have given it a 4. But I can sort of see why, at least for the finale, people maybe voted this a little bit lower because they didn't do it at a big venue like a theatre like they used to. They just did it on the main stage with quite a small audience. So it did feel a little bit lackluster for that reason. And that's obviously not the Queen's fault, but it does a little bit unfortunately diminish it for me a tiny bit because I really wish they would go back to having these huge theaters with lots of people and making it a big thing. Although a lot of people are saying now that they think the reason they're not doing it at theaters is because of spoilers and people leaking things. So it is sad that we've got to that point that is maybe the reason, because it does affect the season and how it goes and how good the finale is. So yeah, please people, don't do spoilers, because this is what happens when you do. Also, I know a few of you have commented this and you said it would be interesting to go through the results of the question about who do you think will win and who do you want to win throughout the season to see how it's changed.
How long is this gonna take?
So what I've done is I've got all of those questions from every single Have Your Say poll, and there's quite a few of them. So I'm just going to briefly run through them to look at the trend of how that changed throughout the season. So for the first 3 episodes, I actually asked the question slightly differently, and I said, who do you think is the front runner based on what we've seen? And in episode 1, Suzie, Lexi, and Jules got the most amount, but obviously this was right at the beginning of the season, so it was kind of difficult to make a judgment. In episode 2, you can see there was then a huge shift, and Lexi got the most with almost 3/4 of the vote. And then it was quite similar in episode 3. Lexi also got a huge proportion of the vote. By episode 4, I changed the question to who do you think will win and who do you want to win. So in episode 4, Lexi was still getting the biggest amount for who do you think will win. And then for who do you want to win, it was a little bit more split, but Lexi still got the most. By episode 5, you could see there was a bit more of a split, and people like Anya and Suzie were starting to overtake a little bit in the votes, although Lexi still had a decent proportion. Episode 6 is where I think it really started to change, and actually Suzie was the one that came out on top for quite a lot of them. Episode 7 was where Anya started to then come up, and Lexi and Suzie started to get less and less votes. I think because by this point, Anya had started winning quite a few episodes. By episode 8, Anya was definitely getting the most in the Who Do You Think Will Win, but it was still kind of split with Who Do You Want to Win. And again, this was sort of a trend that continued. Who Do You Want to Win was still kind of split with people like Suzie, Lexi, and Anya getting the most, but also Jules. But then Who Do You Think Will Win? Anya started getting like 50% of the vote or even more. And then by episode 10, Anya was getting 65% of the vote for Who Do You Think Will Win, whereas none of the other queens really came close. And then from episode 11 onwards, Anya was actually getting more votes in the Who Do You Want to Win the season, and then she was dominating in the Who Do You Think Will Win the season with over 80% of the votes. And this continued throughout episode 12, 13, and then into 14, Anya was getting almost 3/4 of the votes, whereas Lexi and Jules were only getting 8.6 and 14% respectively. So I just think it's really interesting that it kind of fluctuated, that Lexi was on top for the first 3 episodes because she had that win in the first episode. Then I think it was Suzie because she was doing really well. And then Anya kind of came up the ranks and the other two sort of went down a bit. And then Jules, almost near the end, started to really come out on top, which then makes sense as to why Anya and Jules were the final 2. But let me know in the comments what you think. Does this trend kind of follow what you thought the season outcome would be? Or did you think that another queen was going to be on top? Okay, so let's move on to the comments for this week. And we're going to move on to my Patreon comments first, because as we know from the comment earlier, obviously I do exclusively only do things for my Patreon members, and I diminished all of the others.
That is correct.
So my Patreon Steven said, genuinely, entirely, Jules ate that lip sync, but I think it was correct for Anya to win because of the track record. And my Patreon Khadija, I think that's how you pronounce it, said, I think they need to do a better job differentiating between lip sync for the crown and lip sync for the win. And my Patreon Riot said something pretty similar and said, I feel like Anya had it in the bag, but oh my god, Jules did fight. My Patreon Emmy mentioned something that I also felt, which was, I'm grieving the big theatre finales. It's just not the same on the regular main stage, which I totally agree with. It does make it a bit more lackluster, I think. And my Patreon Kerry mentioned something that I also felt, which was, if the stage hadn't been so dark, Jules's costume wouldn't have been so cumbersome, especially the umbrella, and maybe she would have won. And moving on to the comments in my Have Your Say poll, as you can imagine, there were a lot of people who mirrored what I and some of my Patreon members had said about the fact that Jules clearly won the lip sync, but Anya ultimately deserved the win for the season. There were also a lot of comments saying Lexi was robbed, and I assume maybe they're talking about Lexi not being in the top 2. I did really enjoy when Lexi did all of her reveals when she realized she wasn't in the top 2, because I was like, well, you've paid for the outfit, so you may as well do the reveals. I would do the same thing. So I thought that was actually kind of funny. And it kind of looked like Sam had a reveal, because it looked like she had her hand behind her back, but then she didn't do it. So let me know in the comments, do you think Sam did have a reveal? And if so, why didn't she do it? There were also quite a few slightly negative comments about the season, saying that it was the worst season ever or that it was underwhelming. I'm not sure I would say it was the worst season ever. I think that's a little bit harsh. I think the finale was underwhelming, definitely, but that's not the Queen's fault, that's the show's fault. But then if the show is doing it to avoid spoilers, then ultimately they either need to have tighter security or people just need to stop being mean and posting spoilers because it's ruining it for the rest of us. But then there were some more positive comments with people saying, great season, great queens, great spread of challenges, pretty close to perfect, just missing a little something. And I would just like to say thank you so much for all of the really lovely positive comments you've been sending me on the Have Your Say poll and in the comments on the actual videos themselves. Ever since I changed this format and switched it up and started being a little bit more, goofy and stupid.
I'm a little bit goofy.
People really seem to enjoy it, so thank you so much. I have truly loved reading your comments in the Have Your Say poll and also in the comments on the videos, and I'm so glad that you're enjoying this, and I do love having you here, so thank you so much for your lovely comments. Okay, so finally, let's move on to a little bit of light drama to do with some apparent suspicious activity to do with the season 17 finale voting, as well as Suzie Toot may have accidentally broken her contract. Okay, so let's start with the suspicious voting for the finale of season 17. So, as you may know, for many years now, Drag Race encourages fans to vote for who from the top 3 or 4 queens they want to win the season. Typically, Drag Race will post photos of each of the queens on Instagram or Twitter and get fans to like each of the queens' posts for who they want to win. Although this is sort of like a vote, we know that these aren't necessarily votes that make a difference to the outcome because RuPaul ultimately has a say for who wins. But some people have argued in the past that these social media posts are a good reflection of which queens are the most popular, and perhaps the show does take this into account when deciding on the winner. However, with season 17, it seems that there may have been some suspicious activity on these social media posts. So, people first started talking about this suspicious activity a few weeks ago, just after the final 4 were announced in episode 14. On the 8th of April, I took screenshots of the posts for the top 4 queens on Instagram, and at that time, the stats were Anya's post had 178,000 likes, Jules's post had 153,000 likes, Lexi's had 36.2 thousand likes, and Sam's had 22.1 thousand likes. There were then several reports online that the votes seemed to be going up exponentially on certain queens' posts, particularly Anya and Jules, and people were saying that their posts had received thousands of likes within minutes. And at one point, Jules even had more likes on her post than Anya did, although that later changed. I then took screenshots again a week later on the 17th of April, and the stats were then Anya's post had 712,000 likes, which means that her post went up by 534,000 likes, which is an increase of 300% within 1 week. Jules's post then had 470,000 likes, which is an increase of 317,000 likes from before, which is an increase of 207%. Lexi's post was at 70.6 thousand likes, which is 34.4 thousand more likes than she had before, which is an increase of 95%. And Sam's post was now at 43.7 thousand votes, which is 21.6 thousand more votes than before, which is an increase of around 98%. So while all of the Queen's posts did increase significantly, Anya and Jules's posts increased so much, people seem to conclude that the likes must be coming from bot accounts. There were also people pointing out that many of the comments on these posts were from seemingly empty Instagram accounts that had been newly created. However, just to make it clear, no one is suggesting that the queens themselves are responsible for these bots. I think that's very unlikely. It was more likely that some fans were buying bot accounts to try and boost the likes for their favorite queens, although this is just a theory and none of it has been confirmed. People then started joking about this online, and even some of the queens started joining in and joking about the potential bot likes. For example, Jules posted saying, "All we can truly do is laugh because this is so unserious." Lana then commented with the crying emoji, and Dawn from season 16 commented saying, "Girl, what do you mean you're breaking records?" Other content creators also mentioned this whole bot suspicious activity thing, such as Bussy Queen. But another Drag Race queen who talked about this was Trinity the Tuck on her YouTube podcast. And I saw a clip of Trinity talking about this on the Instagram account Shadiva Online.
Anya would gain 50,000 likes in a matter of a minute. And then it would gradually go up.
So what are you saying? You think someone's buying their likes?
I don't know. I don't think it's them, but I think something was going on.
I also came across an interesting Reddit post on the RuPaul's Drag Race subreddit by the user Dogboy678, where they collated all of the posts of the finalists from the last several years of Drag Race and how many likes they got on their posts. If we go back to the earliest season they included, which was season 6, which aired back in 2014, we can see that Bianca Del Rio, who was the winner, only got around 21.5 thousand votes, which was still quite a lot at that time. But then if you look at season 7, 8 and 9, the votes do go up, but not by that much. Then, in season 10, Aquaria got 138,000 likes, which was substantially more than any other queen up till that point. Then, the average amount of votes started going up and up from there. But even if we look at some of the more recent seasons, such as season 15, Anitra got 211,000 likes, which was more than anyone else up till that point and was still kind of unheard of. But then if we compare that to season 17 again, back on the 8th of April, Anya had 178,000 likes and Jules had 153,000, which isn't necessarily that unusual. But then they increased to 712,000 and 470,000 likes, which was around triple the amount there had ever been on any Queen's post before. And this seems to be further proof that there was likely some kind of suspicious bot activity involved, which was pushing up the like numbers, because those numbers just don't add up. And although Drag Race has become more popular over the years, those numbers still seem way too high compared to the previous numbers. And of course, in the grand scheme of things, this doesn't necessarily matter because these posts aren't really used for anything other than as an indication of which queens are popular among the fans. But it does raise questions about who did this and whether we're going to see more of this sort of thing in the future. So let me know in the comments what your thoughts are about this. And finally, let's move on to some potential tea about Suzie Toot, who may have accidentally broken her contract. We've seen on Drag Race in the past that the queens have given each other money. For example, on All Stars 2, Alaska offered Detox $10,000 to keep her in the competition. And on All Stars 6, Ginger Minge split her $5,000 cash tip with her teammates Jan and Pandora because she said it was a team effort. And she even posted on Twitter afterwards confirming that she paid them. And because of this, it seemed that it was okay for the queens to split their winnings with each other. However, according to a recent tweet, this may not be the case. After the season 17 lip sync Lollapalooza, Suzie Toot tweeted saying, "Before the last lip sync, Corey and I shook hands and agreed that the winner would give the other $1,000. She then attached a screenshot of a money transfer to Corey of $1,000 and the reference said, "I ate you up." However, shortly after Suzie posted this, Candy Muse commented saying, "Sister, delete this, you can legally get in trouble for this via your contract." Suzie then responded to Candy and said, "LOL, wasn't aware of this. For any lawyers around, I gave her that money before the 50k ever hit my account." And I did go and check recently, and Suzie has not deleted this tweet and it's still up on her account. This exchange then prompted a lot of speculation online, with people wondering why this sort of thing would be breaking the rules of the contract. Some people theorise that perhaps World of Wonder does not want the queens to give each other money because it may undermine the competitive nature of the competition. Or some queens may not give their full effort in a lip sync if they know they're getting paid either way because the queens have struck a side deal beforehand. Some online commenters also said that these sorts of rules are standard practice in a lot of contracts, but as I'm not a lawyer, I can't say whether this is true or not. Just out of interest, I did ask ChatGPT about this particular scenario without naming names because I just thought it'd be interesting to see what it would say. And it said that this may fall under clauses in contracts such as anti-collusion/fair play clauses, gambling or side betting prohibitions, and confidentiality and public commentary restrictions, which are all apparently quite standard clauses in reality show contracts. However, this is of course just what ChatGPT said, and I have no idea if this is true or not, so please take this with a very large pinch of salt. But if there are any actual lawyers watching, please let me know what your thoughts are on this. And so it looks like Suzie may have unknowingly broken the rules of her contract. However, it's not clear what the rules are in the first place and which particular rule Candy is referring to in the contract. But I just thought this was an interesting bit of tea and maybe something to bear in mind for future seasons. So there you go, there was the final Have Your Say for RuPaul's Drag Race Season 17. Let me know your final thoughts on Season 17 and what was your favourite moment from the season. And I would just like to say thank you so much to my amazing Patreon members who have supported me for the entire season and before. I so appreciate your support. It is so amazing having you there. I love speaking to you in the Have Your Say polls, the exclusive Patreon chat, and I do just love this community. So thank you so much for all of your love and support. And if you would like your comments featured in my future Have Your Say videos, get early access to my videos, access to the Patreon chat, and a raft of other benefits, please check out my Patreon and I'll put a link to that in the description. Please make sure you like and comment on this video as always, because a little bit of love goes a long way, as we know, and it really does help boost this video in the algorithm. And please make sure you hit subscribe because I would love to get to 150k by the end of the year. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you'll join me in future for more Drag Race gossip, secrets, and drama. Thank you so much. Bye!